So, what are social anxieties? For the mind, they are an essential surviving mechanism. For the conscious you, the real you, they are a hell of a lot of noise. Hi, I'm Miriam and I teach emotional intelligence skills. Welcome to EI for Life. So, let's talk about social anxieties. When you feel so much fear before you go into an interaction, when you feel fear while you are in an interaction with other people, and probably the worst and biggest part is afterwards, when you beat yourself up for everything you just said and did. And you try to analyze what other people said about you and what you think they thought about you. That's social anxiety. Now, I'm deliberately keeping this in a very light tone. I do not mean to be disrespectful. I had anxiety, severe crippling anxiety. I know what it's like. What I also learned was it didn't help me taking it super seriously. Instead, it actually made it worse. I made it a part of my life. So the light tone is to help you get out of the seriousness, to help you step back and look at it. What is actually happening? All right, let's start with the mind. The mind is the non-conscious part of your brain. It's the part that stores the beliefs you have and it makes you act on them. It also triggers all kinds of emotions and thoughts and stories that you heard from other people and which you have now internalized. So they feel like they're your stories, but not really. Now, the first and most essential story the mind has. So again, the part of your brain that is for most people actually in charge most of the time. When you are on autopilot, that's what's happening. When you worry, when you have self-doubt, that stories your mind plays for you so loud that you cannot even really hear your actual thoughts anymore. So the mind is very, very powerful because we let it become this powerful. Because it is reinforced by the people around us who tell us that this is how we're supposed to be. We're supposed to worry about what other people think. We're supposed to fit in. We're supposed to be freaking normal, whatever that means. All right. So the mind has all these stories. And the absolute first story the mind learned when we were born is we need to be loved to survive. Not being happy, not thriving, just living. Why? Because if babies aren't loved, they die. So that's the core story that runs at the bottom of everything that comes on top of it. We gotta be loved to survive. For the mind, therefore, all of these worries we have about other people, all of the social anxiety is actually a survival mechanism. Over time, it gets very much out of hand, and over time we practice this. The more we are surrounded by people who have the same kinds of thoughts and stories they say out loud, like, oh, did you see how she looked at me? Oh my God, she doesn't like me. She totally hates me. These are stories we tell about other people. These are stories we tell as if they mattered. Why? Because our minds make them matter. Our minds think we gotta be loved. This whole system is also reinforced by social media. Buttons like buttons actually make us believe that we are liked by total strangers on the internet, when in fact it's more accurate to say that they're actually living out their dopamine needs by pressing a button and then it changes color. But that's not what we think. The story is, the more likes I get, the better. The more safe I am. Survival is about safety. So social anxiety is a soothing mechanism. It's a survival mechanism for the mind. So when you go to a party, before you go to the party, you will feel fear. You will feel certain thoughts about what you should wear. How will people perceive you? What should you do with your hair? Why? Because your mind thinks you gotta look and behave in a certain way to fit in, and fitting in is essential, otherwise you will die. Now this sounds ridiculous, and your conscious mind knows this is ridiculous because going to a party and not being a hit does not kill you. But the mind doesn't know this, and you cannot tell the mind this is nonsense, because the mind doesn't learn like that. It learns from experience. Now, let's say you go to the party and you do bomb, and maybe you even get kicked out. And the crucial part comes after, because what does the mind do? What tape does it run? If it runs with stories beating yourself up, you are actively punishing yourself for your behavior. So again, it's not other people. You have internalized their stories about what should be how you should behave, what should have happened, how everybody should have loved you and kissed the ground underneath your feet. And when that doesn't happen, the mind starts immediately this punishment system, which is guilt and shame and self-doubt and nitpicking about everything that happened. And this is the mind actually, believe it or not, soothing itself. Why? Because it runs along a pathway that it's used to. It runs along a pattern that feels familiar. And for the mind, familiar is actually much better than anything else. Familiar is the equivalent of safety. We've done this before, we're doing it again. Okay, it works. Even if it actually doesn't, even if it makes you miserable, if it wastes hours of your time and a ton of energy, your mind doesn't notice those parts. It just desperately tries to stay alive and keep you alive. So it tries to make you socially acceptable and loved, because it thinks that you need that to live. So what can you do specifically with social anxiety? You can, first of all, step back. The first part is to realize that this is the mind running these patterns. I started thinking of my mind as a really badly trained AI. And I found this super helpful. So it gives me advice I don't really want. It gives me stories I never asked for. I recognize the stories. I know who trained them. I know where they come from sometimes, not always, but sometimes I know exactly where they came from. But now I know these are not my stories. This weird fear about being liked, not my story. I know I'm safe, even if I bomb at a party or get kicked out. I'm fine. Now the mind needs to learn this through experience. And how do you do that? If you have a lot of social anxiety, there's these ideas that you need to expose yourself to your fear and face your fear. But actually what happens when you do that, when you face your fear, when you expose yourself to situations that terrify you, your mind just goes into pure survival mode. It cannot possibly learn. So you might leave that party feeling, being alive, but your mind will not learn. Instead, it runs the soothing after-party mechanisms of beating yourself up. So what can you do instead? The mind does need to learn from experience. It needs to learn that it is safe, and it does have this pattern that it needs to be loved. Okay, so you got to treat the mind with love. So first you start with loving yourself, exercising this self-love. So self-love isn't just, sitting there and saying, I'm so in love with myself. No, it's practicing new thoughts, like positive thoughts about yourself. It's using all kinds of self-love techniques. I do have a free course, and I will link to it in the description if you want to get started with that. And so embodying self-love is much, much more than just knowing you're worthy. It's, living it through your thoughts, through your actions, and through the emotions you have about yourself. So that's the first part. You can absolutely use other people as mirrors. Look at the people you want to love you and just flip it. Do you love them? Do you like what they just said? You can focus on the people who really do love you. Yes, they're in your life. Spend time with them. Show your mind, soothe your mind, show your mind that it's okay to just be around people and be relaxed. And it might be that you cannot learn this at parties if parties stress you out. You want to go through what in Yin Yoga is called the edge. I love this concept. So in Yin Yoga, the edge is the point where you are still comfortable. So you do not push past your comfort. When you feel uncomfortable in a situation, you actually pull back. Or in Yin Yoga, in a position, You pull back. So you never overstrain yourself. And that is how your mind becomes more flexible and how it learns. Don't stress yourself out. Be kind to yourself. That's also how your mind learns to trust you. Because right now, the mind takes over with all those worries because it doesn't trust you. The you who doesn't care about other people. The you who wants to be herself, himself, themselves. The you who just wants to live. And the mind just goes, are you insane? That's dangerous. We gotta be loved and we gotta do stuff to be loved. So the mind doesn't trust you. Over time, when it learns that you treat your mind with respect and care, that yeah, you do soothe it as much as you can, it learns new paths, new options, new ways of being in your life and not getting in the way anymore. So understand that social anxiety is your wife's, your wife's, your mind's way of trying to keep you alive. Treat it as such. Treat it as somebody trying to desperately stay alive. Treat it with respect and care. You can even talk to your mind and say, it's okay, we're good. You can say something like, before you go to the party, if you really don't want to go, we can stay here. Or you can say, what if we go and if you become so uncomfortable, we just leave straight away. And then you do that. Become trustworthy to your mind. And once your mind trusts you, it relaxes. And when your mind relaxes, that's when the real change happens. Because your mind doesn't want to be stressed out either. And it finds easier patterns once it can. Once it has the space to do so. All right. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I also have a website, ei-forlife.com. If you don't want to put the questions, in public comments, you can just contact me through the website. I do answer all of them, and you might even inspire a video, because I love to make these for you. Have a wonderful day, and see you in the next video.